My name is Cahill, and I'm a Big Thief fan first and a human being second. So here's a podcast. In each episode, I'll be discussing one record by the greatest band in the world probably, with some select guests. You'll hear stories, opinions, deep dives, and most importantly, huge admiration for a band that's delivered some of the most technically impressive and emotionally profound music of the 21st century. Welcome to I Saw the Masterpiece, a podcast about Big Thief. This is episode 3, U.F.O.F. In 2018, off the back of the increasing success and hype that came about as a result of their first two records, Big Thief retreated into the forest. It sounds counterintuitive, and it might just be that. But what came out of it is arguably Big Thief's breakout record, a mystical, hypnotic departure from their previous work. Hidden amongst nature, in the secluded Bear Creek studio outside Woodinville, Washington, the band began to record a set of songs that turned sharply away from the genre exploration and lyrical directness of Masterpiece and Capacity, where the meaning of Adrienne Lenker's lyrics about trauma, relationships, addiction and family were once only lightly veneered over. There was now a hypnotic inscrutability that was reflected in the left turn of the music to something more distant and elliptical. Almost 3 minutes into the opening track, Contact, the simmering tension of the instrumental breaks down, punctuated by a blood-curdling scream from Adrienne. The title track follows this up with a middle eight of vocal manipulation and repeated words that sound like they've been spoken backwards and then played in reverse. Track 4, From, which is one of 2 tracks that was initially released on Adrienne's solo album Abyss Kiss, opens with what sounds like a glass marble running across a wooden floor. Open Desert, then, continues the first side's tendency towards repeated guitar figures that in some listeners seem to propagate a feeling of dread, and in others, warmth. Track 8, Strange, features obscure lyrics about Luna moths and fruit bats crying, and the sound of breath features heavily enough to warrant crediting 3 of the 4 members of the band with doing so in the liner notes. Betsy is a sparse, eerie track where Adrienne sings and hums at the lowest end of her register about driving into New York City. Terminal Paradise, another Abyss Kiss rework, features the voice of guitarist Buck Meek in tandem with Adrienne's, over hazy, repeated backing vocals, while bass-heavy penultimate track Jenny reintroduces the claustrophobia of Contact one last time before the album reaches its conclusion. But of course, it's not all off-kilter experimentation. There are more conventional genre songs that ground the record too. Cattails, Orange, and Century are all fairly straightforward folk songs, but they explore the genre in a way that Big Thief had yet to do as a 4-piece. This exploration would inform similar cuts on later albums. Closing track, Magic Dealer, casts a spotlight on Adrienne Lenker's vocal delivery and lyrics in a way that no other track on the album had done up to this point. Magic Dealer also calls to mind the near a cappella tracks from earlier records, like Little Arrow and Lorraine off Masterpiece, and Mary off Capacity. When U.F.O.F was released almost a year after recording, the critical response was one of universal praise. Mojo, Q, and Rolling Stone all gave the record 4 stars out of 5, with glowing reviews also coming from The Guardian, The Observer, and The Independent. Pitchfork named U.F.O.F Best New Music, and rated it 9.2 out of 10. Reviewer Jeremy D. Larson wrote, "Guitar lines are Mobius strips. Bass lines lead you off the map. And the drums feel less like Krivchenia is hitting them and more like he is lifting sounds out of them. A dazzling record, no doubt, but the boundless joy comes from its glacial restraint, from sensing all that lies beneath its surface and all that goes unsung." U.F.O.F has an average rating of 3.9 out of 5 on review platform Music Board, with one fan titling their 5-star review with just one word: Jesus. So you're the person who introduced me to Big Thief, or tried to.
Yeah, I tried so hard.
Who brought you to Big Thief?
Yeah, so my best friend Rhoda introduced me to Big Thief. I found, because we actually share Spotify, so I found a Big Thief song on one of her playlists, and I listened to it and I was like, I like that. And then I listened to it again and I was like, I really like that.
This is my very good friend Grace. When we were in college together, she tried and failed to get me into Big Thief's music. And it wasn't until Two Hands was released in October of 2019 that I finally came around to the band. Still, I credit her with being the first person to ever pique my interest with their music. Our shared experience with the band involves listening to my ranking of their tracks in order on the car ride home from a CMAT concert in Limerick, and getting Barrier right in front of Adrienne at their most recent Irish gig, while we both unknowingly had COVID. Grace is currently living and working in a hostel in Lisbon. She recorded this Zoom interview in the back office of the hostel, and so every now and again, you might hear a little bit of background noise. You tried to get me into Masterpiece and Capacity. I was like, yeah, this is cool, I guess. And then like in
Yeah.
2019, I started like quote unquote listening to music seriously, and U.F.O.F came out. And I'm going to be honest, I hated U.F.O.F when I started listening to it.
Oh,
I don't know if you
I love
remember.
it.
I hated it. I was like,
Yeah.
what is this crap?
Ouch.
I just didn't like
No,
it at
just kidding.
all. I
Yeah,
didn't get it. It was too intense for me.
a lot of people felt that way, and I feel like it's because it was a bit of a departure as well from their first two albums,
Yeah.
which were more kind of had a heavier sound and stuff, and were like, I
A
don't
little
know, I
bit
guess
more like
more indie
real.
rock. Yeah, but then their next album is super different, and
It was,
yeah.
yeah, it was kind of like the first song being a song that just has this scream at some point in the background and
Oh
this
yeah.
very mild post-punk breakdown. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I remember listening to the first time on a lawnmower. Like, what am I listening to? I thought this band were good. Why is this being
Lawnmower.
rated so highly?
Oh my God, yeah. I remember I was walking to Salt Hill and it was like a really windy day, so I could like barely hear it. And I was like, wait, why is it so like quiet and soft?
Yes.
Then after like listening a few more times, it became like my like album that kind of defined my summer that year. So
Yeah.
I just, yeah, ended up falling in love with it.
Like, it was the first one of theirs that I properly listened to, and it's a shame because I was like, okay, Big Thief. And then like Two Hands came out that October, was it? And it was
Yeah,
like so beyond. I was like, oh, this is it. I get it now. And over time I've
yeah,
gone back to U.F.O.F and I've really, really loved it, enjoyed it,
yeah.
become obsessed with
It's,
some of the tracks from time to time. You know yourself.
I don't know, it's just very like, I think it's a little bit less accessible in the music and also in the lyrics, to be honest. It's still very like rooted in emotion and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of rawness to it still, but it's a bit more, I don't know, it's not as obvious, I guess, as in Masterpiece and Capacity, where it's
Yeah,
kind of clear relationships between people, you know?
absolutely. Yeah. And I think it takes circling to the other ones that are about those kind of things, but also like taking on their more accessible sounding music to come back to
Mm,
U.F.O.F, or even listening to some of the more kind of esoteric tracks on Dragon to come back and be like, oh,
mhm,
I get this now. I get what they're trying to do here. I understand it better and how the more acoustic cuts fit into it. Because like
for sure.
Orange is kind of seems out of place from time to time, but then it just, I don't know. I really appreciate this album for what it is now.
Mm,
It's still not my
yeah,
favorite, but like it's Big Thief. So like
yeah, it's so difficult.
it's not like the whole reason we're doing this podcast is because everything they've made is excellent. Like,
Yeah,
there's no
exactly.
question. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for in this preview episode, but you never know where this podcast might go in the future. A massive thank you to Grace for letting me talk to her for the 1000th time about Big Thief, and a massive thank you to Big Thief for existing. Other than the Big Thief music I've sampled for illustrative purposes, the music used throughout this podcast is called Acidalia Planatia by Charlie Schmidt. And as a final note, I'll leave you with my favourite lyric from this episode's album. From the song Orange, fragile means that I can hear her flesh, crying little rivers in her forearm. This has been I Saw the Masterpiece, and I have been Cathal. Goodbye.